Some new information recently surfaced from George Janko on why he left the Impulsive podcast with Logan Paul and Mike Malak, and it's in regards to allegedly being sexually assaulted by famous comedian Bobby Lee.
Then every 2 seconds he kept grabbing my dick. I don't think... How would you feel if a man that has his back completely towards you, that only turns around to grab your dick...
Also, y'all, I know this is a new channel. I'm sorry I went MIA for so long. I was moving. I do have rolly floors now. Impulsive is Logan Paul's podcast. His right-hand man is Mike Malak. And then the third co-host of the show was George Janko, who has now left the show completely. The three of them used to be good friends. We'll kind of get more into that. But they haven't really talked much since. Both Mike and George have addressed this publicly. It's been probably over a year since this all happened. And they never spoke behind the scenes. They ran into each other once at an airport. It was cordial. But they haven't done anything until recently because George's podcast has become so successful. He had Mike Malak on, and well, George did not hold back. So just to take y'all back a little bit and give you some backstory on what happened on the Impulsive show, it was the three of them plus Bobby Lee as the guest. This podcast started making big news because George Janko got up midway through the podcast and left off in a storm of anger.
He is clocked out.
Yeah,
I know.
George has been under a tremendous amount of abuse.
No,
Stop, George. I want you over here with me. George, I want you over here with me. Chase him down. Go. You find him. George, no, go get him. Go get him. I said this, he walked, and that's a first, and now we're going to have to deal with the fallout of this episode for the next 2 months.
I actually watched this podcast at the time it released, and the world blamed George for this, saying that, you know, he couldn't take a joke or Bobby Lee is just a comedian or whatever. And don't get me wrong, I'm actually a fan of Bobby Lee, but, you know, breaking the law is a different story. But I always thought that this clip was super weird. I never really blamed George for walking off. And this is me thinking that before I have all the information I'm about to share with y'all and George's side of the story.
You suck. First of all, don't touch me.
Yeah.
Do not touch me.
My bad.
Thank you.
But you have to think about the position George is in. He was relatively still new to the Impulsive show. Obviously, this is going to help his career a lot. But he's sitting in the room with Logan Paul and Bobby Lee, two massive celebrities that can blow his career up a lot. So obviously, even if he's super uncomfortable, he's not going to want to say anything. And I think Logan Paul knew this and took advantage of George for that.
He started the episode putting his balls in my face. I let that one go. Then every 2 seconds he kept grabbing my dick. I don't think... How would you feel if a man that has his back completely towards you, that only turns around to grab your dick...
Right.
Talk shit to your face, and you can't smack or beat the living breaks off of this guy. Because Logan makes me apologize to this man, or I don't have a job on Impulsive anymore.
But now that George has his own show, he has finally come out and say that many parts of that podcast were completely taken out or hidden from the world to see just because Logan Paul or whomever behind the scenes is trying to uphold their reputation. It's just a PR move to make Impulsive look better because we don't know what parts were taken out. It already looked bad in my opinion, but we don't know what else has been taken out from this clip.
Did they not cut shit that you should have stood up for me and said, hey, you can't cut that shit? That's going to make him look like an idiot for leaving.
Okay, let's slow down, and I'll answer that.
And I honestly think the only reason Mike Malak came onto George's show to do this podcast was, again, a PR move and trying to make Impulsive look better. Or it could be the fact that George's show is doing absolutely huge numbers right now, and it's like when he first left the show, they're probably like, oh, what the flip? It's just George Janko. Nobody's going to care about him, right? But then he goes and starts this insanely successful show. Logan Paul is probably sitting behind the scenes like, oh my God, this thing is getting numbers. We need to rebuild this relationship. Again, I think this is nothing but a business move. Logan Paul has continuously for years used Mike Malak as his female dog. Let's call it what it is. Mike is always there when like Logan's like, I need this done, go do it. Mike is always going to be that right-hand man. So I think that's the only reason they came to this podcast whatsoever, was either to clear their name or maybe it's a business move, but I don't think there's any true intentions of a friendship going on here. And it's just funny to think about it like that because I don't think Mike Malak expected George Janko to drop all the... I mean, he exposed it a lot. He says a lot of stuff that happened behind the scenes, and including that Logan Paul and Mike, you know, took clips out of this podcast. And I was extremely surprised to see that Mike did admit to that. So now we know 100% that clips from that Bobby Lee alleged sexual assault scene were deleted from the podcast.
We have numerous times on the show, which I'm sure a number of shows do, cut things that we believe will protect the integrity or reputation of the guest.
That protected nobody but him.
No, of the guest. That's what I'm trying.
Well, what about the guy that you break bread with, bro?
And from what George said about it, it seems like those scenes would have very much helped support the fact that George had every excuse in the world to walk away from this podcast, but Impulsive wanted to put it under a light that made George look worse or made them look better, whatever it may be. The situation is actually extremely sad because you can tell from the way George speaks about it that, you know, he's been thinking about this stuff for a while and has never really said anything, whatever his reasonings are for that. Again, maybe he's just scared of, these people are probably pretty powerful people. They're very famous celebrities. We've seen all the stuff that Logan Paul has done in the past, and we'll get a little bit more into Bobby Lee. But somebody like George Janko is just coming into the successful position. Maybe that's why he kept his mouth closed about it for a long time. But now he's letting it fly.
So while I get sexually harassed, my other co-host is trying to fire me, and you're trying to leverage me to be quiet during other guests. And then on my birthday, you guys shot 3 episodes, so I couldn't show up.
And the sad part is that he came out on this podcast and he fully believes that he was sexually assaulted by Bobby Lee, and he says that he doesn't think his friends, more specifically Mike Malak, because it sounds like they had much more of a closer relationship, did not stick up for him. George also made remarks on this podcast about, you know, his livelihood depends on this. His friends are involved in this. His only friend group, his money, his finances, everything. There's a lot of stressors of why he's not able to get up and say anything, even if he really wanted to. And he basically alludes to the fact that Logan Paul knows this and threatened him with knowing that information.
What did you want me to do about the Bobby Lee?
I don't know, maybe not tell me to shut up after I get sexually harassed.
I didn't tell you to shut up. I never said that.
I looked at Logan, I go, Logan, this is going to make me look really bad.
No.
And he says, I don't give a fuck what you look like. Bro, come on, dog.
I just want to go 3 months without hearing the slimiest, scummiest shit about Logan Paul. Like, it's actually crazy how much this guy finds himself in the worst case scenarios. And speaking of that, this video is solely about Bobby Lee and Bobby Lee being a scummy person, but there was so much that George unveiled on this podcast about the shit that Logan Paul did, including Logan Paul flexing about making $11 million a week from this podcast, but not paying either George or Mike, and Mike admitted that as well. So if y'all want to follow a video on just Logan Paul and what was said about him from George, let me know in the comments. But back to Bobby Lee, you can look at the comments on George's podcast, and they're absolutely disgusted with Bobby Lee's actions, as they should be. Bobby Lee continuously freaking touched his dick over and over again on a podcast. I don't know what person in their right mind doesn't think that's completely fucking weird, but it is good to see now that this information is coming out that the comments do agree that this is ridiculous. And I think the craziest part is that this isn't a first for Bobby Lee. There's many clips going all over the internet right now because of this whole situation, showing time and time again where Bobby Lee has done this in the past, where he is throwing himself onto a person who has made it crystal clear that they do not have any intentions of doing that with Bobby Lee, or have completely told him, you know, step back, get away from me, or they're trying to scoot away, whatever it may be, and he's just putting themselves onto them. It's actually weird as shit.
Yeah, you don't feel good? You want me to do it again? What am I? What? Where are you going?
Do not kiss my ankle, my ankle bone.
My bad. I'm sorry, come back. Everything's fine. Everything's fine, everybody. Everything's fine.
And I have to keep saying the word allegedly, but allegedly, this should be sexual assault or sexual harassment. And I feel like the only reason he's not getting charged is because he's a famous comedian or celebrity. We see this happen too much in our day and age. And I think because of social media now, we're finally starting to see like a lot of these people come to light. But like, it just seems like a lot more of these people lately with a lot of money or power or success are getting exposed for being just, it's fucking weird, dude. And some people might say it's just a comedy bit or whatever. And I completely get that. And I am all for comedy. And I'm actually a fan of Bobby Lee's comedy. I think some of the stuff he does is really funny. But at the end of the day, there is a huge difference with, you know, telling a joke that maybe it crosses the line. Maybe there's some blurred lines of that joke. And I'm all for that. You know, when you're on the stage doing comedy, if you're making people laugh, that's what it's all about. But there's a difference between that and breaking the law. I think it's just really sad to see that George went through this on the show. It was covered up. He reached out to his friends Mike and Logan behind the scenes and basically just got shut down over it. Obviously, him being like sexually assaulted like that, allegedly sexually assaulted like this on camera is ridiculous. But when you think about all this stuff going through his mind behind the scenes of like his position of, hey, if he says something, maybe his career is blown to pieces, and it seems like Logan Paul was using that against him. There's just a lot that he held in for a super long time. So it's really sad to see. It's good to see that this is coming to light now. I don't know. I just personally think, I know there's a lot of Bobby Lee fans out there, but I'm not going to sit here and defend his actions whatsoever. I just cannot fathom to think that that could possibly be a joke, especially when he has a past history of doing this over and over again with many different people. But feel free to let me know your comments about it. Let me know your thoughts. We back, baby, and we're going to be doing a lot more videos soon. So appreciate y'all watching, and I will see y'all in the next video.